The sun beat down on the asphalt, turning the air into a hot, shimmering haze. Inside my car, the air conditioning fought bravely, but the feeling of stuffiness was constant. The routine of a rideshare driver is like this: heat, traffic, and the unpredictability of each new ride. That day, however, promised to be different, and it all started in such a mundane way that it would be impossible to predict what would come next. Parked at a waiting spot, I was scrolling on my phone when another rideshare car pulled up beside me. A man of ordinary appearance stepped out, maybe around 45 years old, with a tired look that was very familiar to me. He approached, and soon we were having that conversation that only those who live on the road understand. Traffic, passengers, the small victories and frustrations of the day. We see everything in this profession, don't we? He commented, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. I smiled, agreeing. Don't even get me started. Every day is a story. Sometimes we even wonder if we're going crazy with certain things. He gave a short laugh that sounded more like a sigh. Crazy? Well, my friend, if I told you the things I've seen, there was a passenger who made me question reality. At that moment, all my attention turned to him. My interest, already sharp by nature, was completely hooked. I, who spend hours on the internet researching bizarre reports, even feeling a chill, I got excited. Could it be possible that I was about to hear one of these tales firsthand? Tell me this story, I said, leaning toward him. I'm all ears. He hesitated, then smiled. His eyes, previously dull with fatigue, gained a strange, distant gleam. He introduced himself as William, and then he began to narrate the day that changed his life forever. It was like this, he began, and his voice dropped a tone, becoming deeper and more confidential. I was parked, waiting for a ride, when a man approached. He didn't seem like a regular passenger. He had an aura, different, and he made me a proposal. Curiosity gnawed at me. What kind of proposal? I asked, almost breathless. He asked me if I could take him somewhere, off the app. I, of course, said no. It's risky, but he insisted. Said he would pay very well. William paused, and I found myself holding my breath along with him. He showed me his wallet, full, stacks of cash. It was an amount I hadn't seen in a long time. I nodded, understanding the temptation. For those who live off rides, money is the engine of everything. I asked where he wanted to go, William continued. He said it was a rural area and that he would explain the route. He offered me $2 per mile driven. A pang of apprehension hit me. Something in the way William was telling this, in the seriousness in his gaze, told me this wasn't an ordinary story. It was something more. And you went? I asked in a whisper. I went, he replied, and that's when everything started to get strange. William seemed to relive each moment of that ride as he spoke. His eyes narrowed and his face was a mixture of confusion and astonishment. And I, listening to him there under the scorching sun, felt a cold shiver run down my spine. His story was becoming one of those reports, and my brain was already starting to make connections. He got in the car, and we set off, William continued. We took a highway, and after about 12 miles, he asked to turn onto a dirt road. I won't give exact directions for obvious reasons, but it was a place I'd never been. As he spoke, I imagined the scene. The car kicking up dust, the sun at its peak, the heavy air. A landscape that at first seemed normal. We passed through a eucalyptus plantation, an endless row of trees. And that's when it happened. He paused, his eyes wide. Suddenly, on the other side of the plantation, the weather changed. The sky, previously blue, took on a grayish, oppressive tone. But I didn't think much of it. Here in the region, the weather changes suddenly. Of course, I knew well the inconstancy of our weather, but the emphasis he placed on suddenly suggested something more. We continued, and it kept getting darker and darker. I thought about the rain that was going to fall, me on that dirt road. That already irritated me. But the passenger was paying well. The tension in his voice was palpable. I was being taken along on that journey. That's when I noticed the vegetation was also changing. The trees, they had no leaves. They were twisted, dark branches like claws. The air became heavy and a bad smell began to appear. A smell of something metallic, decaying, dead, or of something that never lived. The description caused a knot in my throat. Leafless trees, nauseating smell. These were classic elements of the reports. The passenger was very quiet, William explained. He only spoke to give directions. I didn't find it strange. Some passengers are like that. This quietness, amid such a disturbing landscape, added a sinister layer to the scene. He seemed completely indifferent to the change in environment. I noticed we had been driving for over an hour and a half. His voice was almost a whisper. And we didn't pass by any houses, any farms, nothing. Just the desolate road under an increasingly dark sky. The feeling of isolation, of being in a place that shouldn't exist, was overwhelming. William's story was becoming more and more real, and the suspense enveloped me like a cold fog. William's narrative held me in a way that few things had. I was sitting there, but my mind was traveling down that dark road beside him. After another 10 minutes or so, he continued, he asked to turn right, and then we arrived at a small village, a very ugly village with old, decrepit houses, peeling paint, broken roofs, windows like empty eyes. It seemed like time had stopped there, or worse, corroded everything. The image he painted was of pure desolation. My mind, already familiar with the reports, connected the dots. That atmosphere, the village, everything fit. I noticed there were some people on the street, he continued, and his voice faltered. But most seemed not to notice the car. They moved slowly, like shadows. Some were standing still, staring at nothing. There were no children, no noise, just a heavy silence. This detail of the people oblivious to his presence was what chilled me most. It was as if they were on different planes of existence. I drove for another 4 minutes or so, and he asked to stop in front of a house. I calculated the fare. The amount was high. He paid me right away, and even gave me another $100 to wash the car. William smiled, remembering the money, an anchor of normalcy amid all that strangeness. I thought, I can go home and take the rest of the day off. As he got out, he thanked me, asked my name, and introduced himself to me. I introduced myself to him, and his name was another point that marked my memory. Tarek, he said. I thought it would be a Middle Eastern or Oriental name. I don't understand much about it, but at least it sounded like that, I imagined. But he told me this story was far from over. Before entering the house, he reported, Tarek told me that he would probably look for me always to bring him, if I agreed. I agreed, of course, excited about the extra $100. Then he said I should continue down the street to the end and turn left to leave. I shouldn't go back the same way. The serious tone he used made me obey immediately. It was an order. I found it strange, William admitted. That direction would take me to another city. It didn't make sense. But I did what he said, and amazingly, when I made the turn, I came out back on the highway, at the same spot where we had entered the dirt road. My mind was in knots. How was it possible? The shock in his voice was palpable. The break in logic, that apparent teleportation, was the point where reality bent completely. Since I had never been there, I imagined he knew a shortcut. I just didn't understand why we didn't go that shorter way. He was still trying to rationalize, but the seed of the impossible had already been planted. Already far away, I remembered that I hadn't gotten his phone number. How would he find me again? I wondered. And he didn't ask for my contact either. He regretted it, but accepted the small oversight. So I went home. But first, I looked at the clock. Only 10 minutes had passed. 10 minutes, and the day was sunny again. I found all of that very weird. I thought I had imagined everything, he confessed. But when checking the odometer and the money, I saw it was real. I wasn't going crazy. Well, I went home and the next few days continued normally. Hearing that, I felt a chill. Had William crossed a border without knowing? Was he pulled into a world beyond ours? He said he returned to his routine, but the experience of that bizarre ride hung like a shadow, a dissonant melody in his mind. The money and the odometer confirmed the reality of what had happened, but the temporal void and the abrupt exit onto the highway were enigmas without solution. He tried to push the thoughts away, focus on the next rides, but the memory of that place, of those leafless trees and the strange smell, insisted on returning. About a week later, William told me, Tarek shows up again, almost the same way as before. My fellow driver's voice was loaded with renewed astonishment, even in retelling. The coincidence, or perhaps the premeditation of Tarek's reappearance was what intrigued him most. I could feel the tension increasing in the account, the premonition that William's life was about to change irrevocably. I found it quite a coincidence that he found me like that, William confessed. I was at a different waiting spot, on the other side of town, and there he was, standing next to my car, as if he knew exactly where I would be. He described Tarek's figure, unchanged, with the same aura of mystery and a disturbing calm. There was no surprise on his face, just a serene expectation, as if his reappearance was the most natural thing in the world. So he came to the window again and asked me if I could take him there again. I said I could. After all, the extra money was too tempting to refuse, and he got in the car. William's decision, driven by financial need and perhaps by a dose of curiosity, was the point of no return. He was accepting the invitation to enter the unknown again. As the strange events that had occurred that day came back to my mind with full force, I decided to ask him, wouldn't it be easier for us to go by that way I came out, in the opposite direction from the way we went that day? Because we drove for over an hour and a half, and the other way I drove less than 10 minutes and came out at the same place. William's question was logical, rational. He was seeking an explanation for the anomaly, a justification for what his mind refused to accept as logical. Tarek's response, however, was the prelude to the revelation of something much larger and more complex than he could imagine. He gave a slight laugh, William narrated, and the sound seemed to echo from an abyss of secrets. A short laugh, without humor, almost like a hiss, and told me there was no way, and that today we would take another route. Tarek's "there was no way" wasn't a simple negative. It was a different affirmation, one that operated under rules that William didn't yet understand. The chill I felt listening to the account intensified. William was about to receive answers, but they would come with a price. The second trip began with the same strangeness as the first. Tarek's refusal to explain the shortcut and the mention of another route only increased William's curiosity and nervousness. He felt he was on the verge of a discovery, but had no idea of its magnitude. I nodded, William reported, reliving the scene. But I thought he might be stopping somewhere first, and since he was paying per mile, I didn't mind much. The money was still a good incentive. They left the highway, entering the dirt road again. The familiar landscape stretched under the sun, but William's expectation was different this time. He observed every detail, every tree, every curve, waiting for the change. We drove a bit, and soon he asked to turn onto another road, which wasn't in the direction of the one we took the other day. When I turned, the weather changed. It was almost instantaneous. The sunlight began to dim, the air became heavy, and the smell, that bad smell was back, even stronger. The speed of the transformation was shocking. There was no gradual transition like the first time. It was as if they had crossed an invisible curtain. In less than 5 minutes, we arrived at that village. That made no sense. The first time, it took us over an hour and a half to get there. Now, in less than 5 minutes, we were back. It was a leap in space, a trick I couldn't decipher. William's confusion was palpable. The human mind struggles to reconcile the inexplicable with logic, and he was at the center of an experience that defied all known laws. He noticed my strangeness, William continued, and a gleam of something deeper appeared in his eyes. Before I could ask anything, he then said, I know you're confused, William, and I'm going to clarify everything. However, I have a job proposal for you. If you accept, everything will be explained." The suspense reached its peak. Tarek wasn't just an eccentric passenger. He was an agent of something bigger, with a defined purpose. The job proposal was the hook, the promise of answers, the irresistible lure. I was a bit thoughtful. What could this job be? He noticed my hesitation and continued with the same calm, serious voice. "I'll tell you if you accept the proposal. If not, you go back to your normal life and I'll keep looking for you when I need you." The choice was clear. Dive into the unknown in exchange for knowledge and, presumably, something more, or remain in ignorance, with the prospect of being pulled into that strange world whenever Tarek needed. "Look," William told me, his voice reflecting the introspection of that crucial moment. "Just so you know a bit more about me, I'm 45 years old, divorced, have no children, and live alone in a rented little house that here we call a half-water house, which is a little house with 3 rooms. My life is simple, without great aspirations, without anything to really lose." This confession of vulnerability and loneliness made William's decision even more understandable. He had no ties, nothing to prevent him from taking the risk. I was apprehensive about not having more details, right? But he told me in advance that the work wouldn't be much different from what I was already used to. I should take and bring people when requested. The amount I was offered for the work exceeded by more than 3 times what I made on average. More than 3 times. In the blink of an eye, I saw the chance to completely change my financial life, to have a stability I had never known. The temptation was immense. It was just driving, something William already did masterfully, but with an extraordinary reward. The risk seemed insignificant compared to the promise. I had no doubts and accepted right away. After all, it was just driving. He then began to explain everything about that place, and that's when he dropped the first bombshell. William leaned toward me, his eyes shining with the memory of that instant. The atmosphere around seemed to have become denser. He said like this, "Have you ever heard of Setealen?" Tarek's question echoed inside the car, and I, even just hearing William's account, felt the impact. "Have you ever heard of Setealen?" At that moment, a chill ran down my spine. William's story ceased to be a curious tale and became a testimony. "Man, I froze," William told me. "I wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but I could only stay silent." And Tarek continued, with a calm that only now I understand to be the calm of someone who masters knowledge we don't even dream exists. "It's the name of this place," Tarek began. "It's a world parallel to yours, which we call Near Earth. I know you've already noticed some different things, like the sky, the vegetation, the odor." "Yes, I noticed," William replied, his voice hoarse. "But what do you mean, parallel world?" "Calm down, you'll understand," he said. "There are several overlapping dimensions. This is one of them. This world is identical in size to yours, but with differences. Time passes differently here. Some countries exist, others don't. Culture developed differently, which is why people dress in ways that seem archaic to you." William confessed to me that even seeing all of that, his mind still struggled not to think it was an elaborate prank. "Of course I'm being serious," Tarek replied, his voice firm. "I know it seems surreal. Tomorrow, I'm going to show you more things, and you'll see with your own eyes. Be at the beginning of the dirt road in the morning." The promise of empirical proof. Seeing is believing. It was what William needed. I still gave a nervous little laugh, William reported, but he looked at me with a seriousness that froze my blood. In that look, I saw he wasn't joking. It was his truth, however unbelievable it was. And so, he accepted the meeting. The return trip was another leap in time, reinforcing the impossible nature of that place. I went home thoughtful. William concluded that part, and I went to research more about Setealen. I read and watched reports, got the notion that it wasn't a joke. My concern, however, was that in several reports people talk about the risk of being trapped there forever. I thought, well, Tomorrow I'll question him about that. He had accepted a job, but only now understood the real risks it involved. The morning sun of the next day seemed like an intruder in William's mind. He had slept little, or perhaps not at all. The night had been consumed by turbulent thoughts and incessant research about Setealen. Reports, theories, warnings of danger, everything mixed in a fog of apprehension and, at the same time, fascination. The concern about being trapped in that other world was a constant chill. The next day, I woke up early as usual, William narrated, his voice a bit deeper, a reflection of that day's anxiety. I took a shower, had breakfast, got ready, and headed to the agreed location with Tarek. The meeting point was the beginning of the dirt road, the portal to the inexplicable. Each step toward the car must have been a mix of courage and fear. William was about to cross the border of his reality again, but this time with a glimpse of what awaited him. Arriving at the location, he was already there waiting for me, which caused me some astonishment. I thought, how long must he have been there, right? Tarek's instantaneous reappearance, his presence already established even before William's arrival, was more proof of the singularity of that man and the world to which he belonged. Time, as Tarek had said, behaved differently. I stopped next to him and he got in the car. I asked if he had been there long and he said he had just arrived. Since we hadn't arranged any specific time, I asked how he knew I was on my way. He gave that enigmatic smile again, the same smile I was beginning to associate with mystery, and said I would understand soon and that there was much to explain. The promise of explanations hung in the air like a dense fog. William was hungry for answers and Tarek seemed ready to provide them, but in his own time and in his own way. Then he made a sign raising his hand for us to move forward, and I started the car. This time, the trip was different. There was no silence. He began to explain some things while I drove, and I noticed again everything around changing. The sky, the vegetation, the heavy air, the smell. The second trip to Setealen wasn't just a physical journey, but a gradual immersion in knowledge. Tarek was no longer just guiding, he was teaching. He started by giving me a history lesson. "William," he said, his voice calm and measured, "Setealen is a world like many. Here there are people like in your world, but different in some aspects. This world developed largely like yours." The revelation of the similarity between the worlds, despite the glaring differences, made Setealen even more intriguing. It wasn't a completely alien place, but a distorted mirror, an echo of something familiar. William's story, told by himself, was deepening into an abyss of dimensional secrets into which I was falling with overwhelming curiosity. The dark and twisted landscape of Setealen passed by the windows of William's car while Tarek unveiled the secrets of that world. The narrative was complex, diving into events that challenged human chronology and the very notion of time. William, while driving, absorbed every word, astonishment growing with each new revelation. However, here it has always been a more peaceful world than yours, until a certain point. Tarek continued his explanation, his voice acquiring a tone of melancholy. "Centuries ago, what in your world is only a few decades, this world went through a very abrupt change that would change its destiny forever. An invasion changed Setealen." The word invasion sounded like a silent thunder in the car's cabin. William felt a shiver. An interdimensional war? It was a concept he had only seen in science fiction movies. "Centuries ago, in Setealen time," Tarek continued, detailing the horrors, "this world was invaded by beings from another dimension. These beings were malignant and subjugated part of the 7 Elenians. This invasion was carried out by people from your world who, somehow, discovered how to break the barriers that separate dimensions. The revelation that the invaders were from near Earth, that is, from William's world, was a blow. Guilt and shock mixed with curiosity. Evil had come from his own reality. It is known that they were called." Tarek hesitated for a moment as if the word were forbidden. His voice became lower, almost a whisper. I don't even know if I can say this here, in your world. Their leader, then, sought secrets of magic and occultism to achieve means of massive control over your entire world. That refusal of Tarek to pronounce the invader's name made William understand the gravity of what had happened. It wasn't just an invasion. It was a wound that still bled in Setealen's memory. The quest for power, greed, were familiar human characteristics. But there, taken to a cosmic extreme, they proved catastrophic. The big problem was that, opening this portal without great knowledge, several side effects began to emerge uncontrollably. Several portals began to open spontaneously and uncontrollably, allowing people from your world and other worlds to access Setealen. With this, beings of good and evil began to transit. The chaos generated by an irresponsible incursion was the essence of Setealen's tragedy. What began as a quest for power became a multi-dimensional catastrophe. Some of these beings, the Nemekes, Tarek pronounced the name with reverence, endowed with great intelligence and who already knew how to manipulate portals, but who never presented themselves to the Seven Elenians because at that time, we still didn't have sufficient intellectual, technological, and spiritual development to be visited, then had to intervene to control what was happening. The introduction of the Nemekes, benevolent and powerful beings, brought a hint of hope to the dark. They were the guardians of interdimensional balance. However, other beings who weren't so concerned with this balance and only wanted to take advantage of the situation started a conflict that lasted decades. Those from your world who came didn't resist for very long, and several were killed, including their leader. This conflict caused a large part of the Seven Elenians' population to be decimated by various types of diseases and biological weapons that were used. Nuclear weapons were also used, which caused various mutations in animals and people. After decades, the Nemekes managed to win, but the devastation that had been left could no longer be reversed. William listened attentively to everything, a knot in his throat. Tarek's account was an epic of destruction, a brutal lesson about the consequences of unbridled ambition and ignorance. He could feel the weight of that world's suffering in the air, a suffering that was, in part, a legacy of his own dimension. The desolate landscapes he saw through the window gained a new and painful meaning. Tarek's account continued unfolding like a dark tapestry of history and science from a devastated world. William, the driver, barely blinked, absorbing every detail of the tragedy and resilience of Setealen's inhabitants. I listened attentively to everything he said with great astonishment, William continued to tell me, his eyes fixed on a distant point on the street, as if still reliving that moment. Then he continued to explain to me about the Libouros. Libouros, Tarek told me, has always been the name of our species, just as you call yourselves humans. The revelation of his species' name added a layer of identity and depth to that world. The Libouros, victims of an interdimensional calamity, had to adapt to survive. The Nemekes, then, conducted a study and concluded that the only way for us to continue living would be by undergoing genetic adaptations, because our bodies were no longer capable of adapting in a dark and cold world that it had become. Tarek's voice was loaded with an almost scientific tone, but with underlying sadness. Science and magic intertwined in the world of Setealen. Forced genetic adaptation was proof of the gravity of the devastation. They then developed various types of experiments, and since practically all the world's vegetation had been devastated along with a large part of the animals, we would have to adapt to a new diet. As a dense cloud of dust and gases covered the entire planet, the sun's luminosity became very low, not only because of that, but also because a race of beings that invaded Setealen used absurd technology that drained the sun's energy so that their machines and weapons could function, since they had access to a very rare mineral that required a large amount of energy. With this, the sun lost a lot of mass, becoming a reddish star. The description of Setealen's sun, reddish and weaker, was a powerful image of ruin. William could feel the coldness of that world even under the heat of near Earth. Like, is a Setealen sun different too? William asked Tarek, the question escaping his lips before he could contain himself. And Tarek nodded. So, a genetic change was made so that our eyes could see with little light. With the little light that still remained, Tarek explained. And the portals? William asked. Some portals are fixed, Tarek explained, and others open temporarily due to an energy imbalance that has affected the entire planet since the first portal. These temporary ones normally open in some locations that have already been mapped, and so we know when and where it will occur. The mechanics of the portals, the mystery of William's journey, finally began to make sense. Tarek was unveiling the fundamental laws of his universe. They open due to an alignment of energy fields between your world and Setealen. But it's possible, just like me, to create temporary portals, like the one I created when you came here with me and for all the times I visit near Earth. Knowledge of these portals is passed to few, who are chosen so that everything remains in order and doesn't become more unbalanced. Knowledge that was given to us by the Nemekes. Tarek's ability to create portals, to navigate between dimensions, elevated him to an almost mystical status. He wasn't just a passenger, he was a manipulator of reality. However, some humans manage to cross through temporary portals from time to time, being in a specific location at the right moment. Since these portals have a defined time to close, whoever passed through must return before it closes. Otherwise, a misalignment occurs in the timeline due to the two worlds having different temporality rates. So, whoever can't return gets trapped. The explanation for the fear of being trapped in Setealen was now clear and frightening. The temporal difference between the worlds was the cruelest trap. Many of the 7 Elenians don't like humans, as they blame them for all the misfortune that happened in their world. And that's why whenever someone crosses over, they are called unclean, for having corrupted their way of life, and then they are expelled vehemently. But this doesn't happen with everyone. Some manage to discern when someone comes here by accident and always try to help them return, because they also know that the fault isn't of an entire race and that what happened didn't come to the knowledge of almost anyone in your world, especially since decades have passed since the occurrence. The division among the Libouros, the resentment of some and the compassion of others, revealed the social complexity of that world. William was getting a privileged view of their struggles and hopes. Tarek, it seemed, was one of those who understood and helped. With each revelation from Tarek, William's world expanded, and reality became a complex web of dimensions and mysteries. The coldness of the air in Setealen, the twisted trees and the reddish sun now made sense, painting a somber but fascinating picture. The watchtowers, Tarek began to explain, and William felt a new pang of apprehension. Watchtowers were developed that, through technology provided by the Nemekes, we can monitor a large part of Setealen. The image of imposing structures watching over the desolate horizon emerged in William's mind. Advanced technology in such a devastated world seemed like a contradiction, but there, in Setealen, everything was possible. These towers probe for energy distortions that may indicate someone has passed through a portal. As soon as someone passes through, it generates a distortion that causes the watcher from the nearest tower to begin searches to identify in which location the person is. The precision of the system was frightening. Any intruder would be detected. William imagined the siren, the sound alerting the watchers, the hunt for those who, by accident, cross the border. As soon as they're found, a siren is sounded, so that they are led to a location where memories are erased from that moment on, so that this world remains secret to humans. However, when some 7 Elenian decides to help the human return, they return with all memories of the place. And from there, the rest you already know through the reports. The explanation for the memory erasure and the fragmented reports circulating on Earth fit perfectly. It was a protection system, a barrier to keep Setealen hidden. William felt a chill thinking of those who had their memories stolen, but also gratitude for Tarek, who seemed to be on the side of those who help. The great fear of the 7 Elenians is that, as your technology has advanced by leaps and bounds, this could become a new threat, since along with technology, greed, selfishness have increased a lot, which could represent a great danger to both worlds. The Libouros' concern with humanity resonated in William. The greed and selfishness of his own race had been the cause of Setealen's catastrophe. Would history repeat itself? Astral travels and dreams with Setealen, Tarek continued, shifting focus to another phenomenon. As one and the other don't differ much, considering that one is more conscious, the astral travel, and the other isn't, the dream. What happens is that the astral body has a much easier time crossing dimensions, being able to transit between several in a single journey, not depending on portals. This revelation opened a new layer of understanding. It wasn't just technology that connected the worlds, but also the very nature of consciousness. Due to several genetic alterations already mentioned, the 7 Alenians can see both the physical body and the astral body, with the astral body being what appears more translucent to them. Since it's practically impossible for them to interact with the astral body, the ease of information about their dimension being disclosed is much greater. However, on Earth, almost no one takes this kind of thing seriously, not giving credit to those who report based on it. In a dream, for example, the irony was palpable. The truth was there, available to those who dreamed or traveled astrally, but it was discarded as mere fantasy or madness. William's car continued along the road of Setealen, and the light of the reddish sun bathed the ruins and silent figures passing by them. With each mile, the veil of ignorance unraveled, and the complexity of that world revealed itself. Our organization of governments, Tarek continued, his voice maintaining didactic calm. Setealen also has government, but very different from Earth. Here, most are concerned with the development of new technologies. I say most because a few don't value what's being done. That could improve the lives of people who today live poorly, as you can notice. William looked at the deteriorated houses and the downcast figures they encountered along the way. Misery was a visible reality, even in a world with advanced technology. The disparity between technological power and the population's quality of life was a disturbing echo of Earth itself. Earth's governments already know about Setealen and about the technologies that were given to us by the Nemekes, and they have been trying for centuries to have access to this knowledge, which has always been denied, mainly on the guidance of the Nemekes, who also monitor near Earth and know that such knowledge in human hands could result in the extermination of various civilizations, including your own. The revelation of the government conspiracy was a shock, but not surprising. The greed for power and forbidden knowledge was a human characteristic that William knew well. The fact that the Nemekes were monitoring Earth and preventing access to this technology was a relief, a sign that there was still hope. "And I don't doubt anything, right?" William told me with a heavy sigh, reflecting on the nature of his own species. "Because, for the love of God, you see, we're capable of anything." "The illusions," Tarek continued, his voice serious again. "Having access to this technology and knowledge about soul, spirit, and energies, whenever someone crosses a portal or comes here through astral travel or dream, we try to create illusions of a macabre place, often based on stories from your own culture and art, so that the experience in this world really causes terror and the person doesn't want to know anything more about Setealen, and makes other people not want to either." The illusion strategy was ingenious and cruelly effective. It was a form of defense, to keep their world isolated and protected from the dangers of human curiosity. Fear was the most powerful and effective tool. "The Hook Church," Tarek concluded his explanations, his voice becoming darker. "This place was once for meditation and spiritual seeking, but after what happened, some Libouros who had contact with your culture became fanatics and believe in redemption that will come through the sacrifice of the faithful, who often self-flagellate, torture themselves, or worse things. These only live nowadays to practice these macabre rituals." The existence of a dark cult in Setealen was the final proof that not everything there was just science and survival. The corrupting influence of the invaders had left deep marks, distorting even spirituality. William felt a mix of revulsion and compassion for that wounded world. Tarek's long explanation came to an end. William drove for hours in that devastated world, seeing with his own eyes the ruins and consequences of his own people's greed. "You know," William told me, and his voice was loaded with deep emotion, "when I was there, with him, nothing was as scary as in the reports. It was just a suffering world. Made me think how a simple choice can change everything." And then came the final revelation. Tarek continued. William went on. He told me, "William, I was also born in your world. I was brought here and adapted. Today, I am a recruiter. My job is to find good people who can help in the reconstruction of this world. People with character flaws don't serve. That's why whoever comes without being invited is expelled, or lives the illusions to never want to return." I was silent, processing. Tarek wasn't a passenger. He was a guardian, a link, and he had tested William and considered him worthy. "Your job," Tarek told him, "will be to bring here people I recruit. You will be observed and will learn more. With time, you can also become a recruiter." They stopped in front of one of the watchtowers, and there William received the knowledge to create temporary portals. Then Tarek gave him the final choice. "Now that you know the truth, feel free to choose where you want to live, here or there. If you choose to live here, there's a house for you." The choice: return to the routine, to the half-water house, or embrace an extraordinary destiny. "Well," William told me, and a gleam of conviction appeared in his eyes. "After all that, driven by curiosity and the desire to help those people, I decided I wanted to live there, to help as much as I could. And anyway, I can cross over whenever I want. I'm going now, definitively there, but of course I'll always come back." He finished the account and we were silent for a moment. The noise of traffic around us seemed to belong to another reality. He told me a few more details, but the essential, what really mattered, was this journey. He stood up, looked at me as if in gratitude for having listened to his story, or with the satisfaction of registering his existence here in this world, and told me with a small smile, "One of these days, who knows, maybe we'll run into each other out there, right?" He got in the car and left. I stayed there, thinking. William's story echoed in my mind, made me think about everything and everyone. A random encounter that changed my perception of reality forever. If you've ever had an experience on the threshold of the inexplicable, an encounter you keep out of fear or for not having the right words to tell, I want to hear you. Send your story to the email in the description of this video. Your experiences are the maps we draw in the dark in the hope that others will find the way. Your identity will always be kept in total secrecy. William's journey makes you question, what would you do? Would you accept living in that reality to help in its reconstruction? Or would you remain on near Earth? Use the comments below to share your opinion. And if this account resonated with you, if the journey made you look at the world in a different way, leave your like. This shows me we're not alone in this quest. To continue exploring the secrets that hide beyond, in the shadows of our reality, subscribe to the channel and join this search for the other world.